When you go down the steps into the natural limestone cave of Stump Cross Caverns, you enter a strange, quiet and a rather beautiful place, completely different to the world above ground. What you may not realise is that at the same time, it's almost like you are making a journey back through time. Through history, while generations have lived and died, this cavern has changed very little through thousands and thousands of years. Can you imagine, for instance, that the Yorkshire Dales, perhaps even the very area where you are sat now, once looked something like this? It's surprising, isn't it? Nevertheless, 350 million years ago, long before man appeared on the planet, this part of the Earth's surface lay beneath a warm tropical sea, somewhere near the equator. It was discoveries like this that made scientists realise what vast changes our world had been through. These are what we call fossils. The remains found buried deep in rock are from the bones of dinosaurs, those huge, sometimes fierce creatures that roamed our planet long ago. But the limestone rock that surrounds you in the depths of Stump Cross Caverns is older, far older than the dinosaurs. There are fossils in the limestone rock too, but not of dinosaurs. These are the remains left by seashells, and this the remains of coral from a coral reef like the one we saw. And when they found those, scientists knew that this rock was once beneath such a tropical sea, and under that sea the remains of the living coral reefs had slowly formed a chalky layer on the seabed. What is amazing is that that chalky layer has moved thousands of miles north, pushed up into the hills and changed to become the hard rock that's all around you in the depths of Stump Cross Caverns, and that we now call limestone. There is limestone all around you in the Yorkshire Dales. It creates a very special landscape, and it's like no other rock. One thing above all others makes this rock special. The rain that falls upon it is able to slowly eat it away, dissolve it, and so to slowly open up any cracks and weaknesses within it. You can really see the effect on these limestone pavements at Malham Cove. The rainwater has so opened up the cracks in the rock that the surface is covered with deep fissures, and you need to take great care if you walk across the surface. But underground the effects are even more dramatic. The rainwater is able to sink deep into the rock, finding new ways to travel underground from the hillside where the rain fell down into the valley. And as it does, it opens up those cracks even more, and gradually a network of cave passages and underground streams are formed. Most of these children will be visiting a cave for the first time in their lives. Stories and films have fired their imagination. No doubt some are a little bit scared. What did they think about caves before they came?
They're dark, and sometimes they can have avalanches and holes.
Holes? Where are the holes going to lead to?
Somewhere spooky.
Somewhere spooky.
They like crawl through them to see what's in them and stuff. Bats, rats, bears and wolves. Monsters. Some water drips off and makes it longer, and like 5 centuries on, they're like really long.
About 150 years ago, the hills around Stump Cross were a busy, industrious place where hundreds of miners worked. They were looking for lead. It was a hard life, both above and below ground. These men were mostly poor, and the work was hard. They often died young, but they always dreamed that if they happened to find enough lead, they might get a little bit richer. Underground, the conditions in which they worked were cold, wet and muddy. They had to tunnel a long way through the solid rock to reach where the lead should be, and sometimes when they got there, there wasn't any. So when in 1858, beneath the hill known as Stump Cross, miners broke into cave passages where the lead should have been, they were bitterly disappointed. But these caverns were special. The stalactites and the stalagmites were particularly beautiful, and the passages not too difficult. Miner William Newbold had an idea. He would make an easy entrance into the caves, make pathways, and take the public into the caves for 1 shilling a person. Since that time, thousands upon thousands of visitors like you have visited these caves to experience for themselves this dark world and look at the beauty of its stalactites and stalagmites. Now, with the comfort of concrete pathways and electric lighting, it's perhaps difficult to imagine what it was like when first revealed by the light of that flickering candle. But how were such beautiful formations formed? Thousands of years ago, the passages you visit in Stump Cross Caverns would have been full of water as an underground river carved out the passages. But the climate changed and the river disappeared. Now, instead of the roar of a river, there was only the drip, drip, drip of water from the roof. And as each drop hung for a few moments there in the darkness, tiny crystals formed within it. A tiny amount of the limestone that had been dissolved in the water as it went through the rock was being left behind with each drip, and stalactites and stalagmites were very slowly beginning to form. The stalactites and stalagmites in Stump Cross started to grow thousands of years ago, and they are still growing today.
Let's have a look up here. Can you see the water dripping through the ceiling of the cave? Well, inside those little droplets is something called limestone, and the limestone drips down. You can see it dripping, can't you? Now I'm landing on you. And it forms this hanging from the ceiling called a stalactite. And this stalactite here takes thousands and thousands of years. Now there's still water dripping down here, landing on the floor. When it lands on the floor, again, limestone within the water builds up, and over thousands and thousands of years, a stalagmite forms. And this is a stalagmite down here. Just behind us here, we can see something called a curtain. And if you just look in front of the curtain here, you can see how a curtain is actually formed. The water drips through the ceiling of the cave again and leaves limestone in a ridge shape, in a curved shape. And this bit at the front is just the first part of the curtain. You can see also the colours within the curtain shape, all different colours. And that's because the water drips through the ceiling through lots of different types of rocks and leaves behind different colours. And you can see also the way that the curtain is growing out, because the water's dripping down the edge, down the side of the curtain here, and it's bringing it out and it's growing out to form that arc and that curved shape. So that's called a curtain.
In the 1970s, work was underway digging out the floor to open up this new section of the cave to the public. It led to new evidence about the long and varied history of the cave, and also how the outside climate had changed. As the old stalagmite floor was dug away, bones were discovered beneath it, and archaeologist Thomas Lord was called in to examine them. They were found to be bones of a wolverine, about the size of a small dog. It's an animal that now only lives in colder climates. How long it had managed to stay alive in the cave, we will never know, but it was not something you'd want to meet now round a dark corner. There have been other animal bones discovered in the cave. They don't live here now, but perhaps they fell down open holes that once led into the passages below. Of course, the cave that you see is only a small part of the known passages of Stump Cross Caverns. There are many more passages that only experienced cavers can visit. Deep down below the show cave, the present stream is finally reached. In most weather, the water is little more than a trickle, but this can be a dangerous place. In wet weather, these passages can flood to the roof. And new passages are being discovered all of the time. Some of the most recent were found by Jeff Workman, who at that time was 75 years old. He had already then been associated with the cave for many, many years. In 1963, he set a world record by staying alone in the cave for a total of 105 days. It was an experiment to find out how the body reacted without the daily rhythms of day and night time. Opening a new section of the cave is a big undertaking. A few years ago, another new section, Reindeer Passage, was opened up. Before, it had only been possible to reach it by crawling. To remove the vast quantities of rock, a shaft had to be sunk from the surface. Finally, the lights were switched on for the first time, and the cave was ready to open to the public. People have been going into Stump Cross for a very short time, compared to the long history of these caverns. But unless we take care, nature's work over thousands of years could be spoiled in a very short time. It's unfortunate that the public must be kept at a distance from the more delicate features of the cave, but souvenir hunters and sheer vandalism have already spoiled many of the formations that are within reach. In the known cave, there are corners that few know about. They remain unmarked and pure in their dark, quiet world. Under this hill, there may remain even more wonders, waiting to be discovered, which we can only dream about. Perhaps the glimpse that Stump Cross offers into this dark and delicate world will make more of us respect the wonders of the natural world that we find around us.